Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on digital asset management for CPG success, unifying product data and content, hosted by My Digital Shelf and presented today by Colgate-Palmolive, Mondelēz International, and WoodWing. My name's Sarah Kingham, and I'll be hosting the webinar with you for the next 45 minutes. I'd like to remind everyone that you can send in your questions and comments at any time using the webinar chat room feature. There will be time at the end to answer most of them. There is also an option to send in your questions anonymously, so not to worry if you feel a bit shy. And also just a reminder that I will be sending the recording and presentations to you this time tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that email. You can listen back to it. You can share it with any colleagues of yours or industry associates that weren't able to join us live. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our panelists for today. So first up, we have Abhishek Ahluwalia, who's the Global E-Commerce Director at Mondelēz International. So how are you doing today, Abhishek?
Good, Sarah. No, thank you very much for inviting me, and pleasure to be here.
Yes, we're looking forward to hearing from you. And we also have Eliza Levinsky, who's the Senior Director of Digital Shelf and PDP Excellence at Colgate-Palmolive. How are you doing today, Eliza?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this conversation, and I think it's going to bring a lot of great insights for everybody. So thank you, everybody, for joining.
Fantastic. And we have Dan Pugliese, who's the Vice President of Sales North America at WoodWing. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Excited about today.
Yes, we're looking forward to it too. And last but not least, we have Dale Rivette, who's the Business Analyst at WoodWing as well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm also looking forward to today's conversation.
Fantastic. Yeah, we've got some great insights, so looking forward to it too. And I know we have a presentation for today as well, so we've got that up on our screen. And I believe Dan will be introducing this. So over to you, Dan.
Great, thank you. Sarah, are you going to be sharing the screens, it looks like?
Yes, I'm sharing the screen.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right, just come out of here. Sorry. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining today. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're dialing in from. Very excited to kind of give you an overview of what we're looking to speak about today with the WoodWing solution, with the opportunity to throw some questions out there. But I'm going to start off with a quick introduction of WoodWing and who we are and what we do. So we are a global organization. We've been around since 2000, approximately a little over 250 employees today, and we have over 5,000 customers, and we're working in 60 different countries. And at any given time, we have over tens of thousands of people using our software, which is our digital asset management solution, or known as a DAM. And we'll talk a little bit about that. If you want to go to the next slide. So the biggest challenges we hear in the CPG world is for people that are not using a DAM, is usually they're telling us a little bit about their assets are all over the place, right? They're in either Google Drive or they're in their server. It's very challenging to find them. The other one is they're using a PIM as a DAM, and they'll tell me straight up, they're like, we know this PIM is not used for a DAM. It works, but it's not great. And we know we need to get to the next level. The other piece is they just don't know what a DAM is. So what I'd like to do is kind of, if you go to the next slide, I just want to talk a little bit about what a DAM is at a very high level. You'll see a little bit of it today when Dale shows it in the demo environment. But so everybody understands what a DAM does. So think of like the Google Drive, but being very enhanced, because you have where you store all your digital assets, images, photos, videos, Word documents, PDFs, whatever they might be. But it has great search capabilities by either using a keyword search or by using a folder structure. So all these images have metadata behind them, so those tags behind them so that you can find them a lot easier. But also maybe you're working with designers love to use the folder structure, and you can work it off of maybe a brand, or maybe you're working off a year, and you can really narrow that search down by saying, I just want to look at videos of what inside the DAM, right? So as you're looking for these, then working with those images or whatever they may be, you can make different versions of them quick and easily. So you don't have to necessarily download them. You would check them out, and then you would maybe crop it or make it a black and white. And then what that does is create different versions on the side so that you can see, this is the version I want to use for this specific campaign. The other thing is sharing with your freelancers or agencies. It has a share capability of collection of assets and then using a shared link. So they don't have to be a subscriber to your DAM, but they can actually just click on the link and then upload or download assets. They can make approvals, make comments in there, and then it's shared back to you. So then you can decide whether you want to upload them. So it's an easy way of collaborating. And then everybody has rights and permissions inside the DAM. The nice thing about it is it does have an InDesign plugin, so you don't, again, have to download those assets, but you just open it up and that will show up in the InDesign format. So that's very at a high level of what a DAM is. If you want to go to the next slide. So the other piece is having, we have an open API, and most companies have that open API, and what you want is sort of build an integration so that each systems can talk to each other. So the most common ones are your CMS systems, AI tools, and then project management systems like a Ripe or Monday. Those are the most common ones. And what you want to, we say is get the best that's going to solve those problems. Get the best solution for a project management solution. Get the best AI tool that's going to work for what you're looking to solve. Get the best DAM that's out there, and then let them collaborate. So maybe you start off with your project management system, go to your DAM, get those assets, run it through the AI, and then push it maybe back into the project management system to say, okay, everything has been done now, and really manage that entire workflow process. If you want to go to the next slide. One of the biggest things we just established over the last few months is a connection where we built an integration with this Relator tool. And what this does is it is helps you build and create a workflow for the brochures. So for instance, what it'll do is integrate with your DAM, your could be a CMS, it could be CRMs, it could be your promotional information, PIM information, whatever information that you need to gather, maybe it's currency or geographic location, you're able to create a print or digital workflow process to create those brochures. And it's much faster because it's all automating that entire process. So you're getting rid of those manual processes to go into the templates and things like that. And then it's much easier than if you're pushing it out for geographic location for different states, because the prices might be different or the currency might be different. And it really just helps that streamline that workflow. So it makes things, getting rid of those manual processes to make things more efficient for your teams. Next slide, please. I think also another important factor when you're looking at a DAM is making sure that it's customizable, because every company works different and everybody has a different workflow system and process. So what you want to do is, as you're looking at a DAM, make sure that it can be customized specifically to your workflow. How does that happen? Do they have a team that can help with asking those questions, or a partner to ask these questions, so that how do you work today? How would you like to work? Make recommendations, and then build and customize the workflow and the DAM solution for your specific organization and team. We find that becomes very valuable than just getting a DAM and just putting it out there without having that tight process and workflow. Great. Next slide. And now I will hand it off to my colleague, Gail.
Hi. Thanks, Dan. So to kind of play off more of what Dan was mentioning just now, your challenge with CPG and DAM isn't really just storing your content. DAM is way more than that. So it's really ensuring your rights are approved, governed, ready for your campaigns when you need to launch them. And some of the issues that Dan mentioned, we often see delays or things that are coming from not the current assets, confirming your rights and that everything is consistent. So today I wanted to look at DAM and show how DAM can help with that kind of friction and also really support the AI governance, which is going to help strengthen your content and all of your assets for using AI tools that are out there now. And you can get to, to improve your speed and your velocity towards market. So on this slide, I just have a couple points about, that was the last slide. Thank you, Sarah. So before your content can really move fast and your teams, have to work on accuracy and approval rights and everything in that nature, and be campaign ready, it really comes down to having all your correct information associated, which having a DAM allows you to manage that process. So your SKUs, what campaign something belongs to, having the ability to link certain rights and contracts to certain imagery or product information and channel ready assets. So it's not just where the assets live, it's more about how you have your teams feel confident in the content that they're using and that it's ready to use and they can act faster. The next slide. Thank you. So with this, it's going on the AI governance aspect. AI, there's a lot of different AI out there now. I feel like we've all seen a ton of it. There's AI tagging, there's all these different things we can do now, which can help with digital shelf. But once we get back down to the permissions and rights and control that we're able to enable in your workflows and in a DAM, you can then control more so what you're allowing AI to assist you with. There's different statuses that can help prevent unapproved assets from being reused, putting a lot of safety measures and guardrails in place. And I still believe, and what we've seen as well, I think throughout different industries and CPGs, human review at the end of that is always important. So it really just comes down to as much information that human contact is attaching to those images to then allow AI to take it to the next step and accelerate the process through things like a brochure builder or such of that nature, like Dan was mentioning. So AI can definitely help you move faster. You just want to make sure you're scaling the right content at that speed. Okay. And then this is where talking about a little bit more of then what you can do with other softwares like a brochure builder that connect into DAM. So your PIM connects into your DAM. There's all different, like Dan mentioned, different systems that you can interconnect together to really give yourself a tech stack that's going to enable your teams to work not just as siloed. I think there was one of the presentations at Connect to Commerce, which was a lot of great conversations there. Andy Pizzella from Nature's Way. He was talking about the different styles of teams and different areas that he's worked in and kind of seeing what works best. And I feel like that's where DAM comes into play then, because it starts talking about the how. There's the why, and I think we all have seen the why and have really good, strong conversations about it then. But really, how do you then put that in place? How do you start governing all of this to then connect to the rest of your ecosystem for your e-commerce, your digital shelf, all of that stuff? And through programs such as a brochure builder, you're able to then structure your content in a way and associate it to your DAM to make sure there's checks and balances, whether it's saying something is AI approved to use, or if an asset is not eligible to be used to train AI. Those are the types of guardrails that you can then start putting in place. So if it's all right, Sarah, I'd like to just share my screen to briefly show visually what I'm speaking to here.
Yes, absolutely. I'll just make you the presenter.
Thank you.
There we go.
All right. So here I just wanted to briefly show a visual because I feel like we all learn in different ways, and visually sometimes it can make a difference to add to the conversation. These are just some generic images, very basic, so please don't look at them too closely. They're very illustrator version. But so if you're in a DAM and then I'm not sure, different level of DAMs that people have seen, like Dan was saying on the top for this particular DAM, you can see the folder access and kind of drill down there. And a lot of people are used to organizing in that manner. But once we start getting into what's really going to help you with your AI governance is the metadata and finding things faster and filtering against to see not only if you were to go based on your folders, but if you're just searching within your entire DAM and you need to know the status of something, is that final to be approved? You can also then create your permissions to say only certain programs that pull information from your DAM can only receive information at a certain status, or for a certain campaign, or individuals only have that. So you've got a lot of granular boundaries that you can put in place, which then helps accelerate your speed because you're able to find things faster, have less errors passed along, because as well, when you're creating your content, if you're not governing that at the same time, you're just passing errors along down the line, which is not going to help speed you up and cause issues, obviously. And then once we start looking closer at some of the metadata, you can customize this as well to the terminology used in your particular team, or have that more industry-based. Here I've just put some kind of custom metadata fields here just to kind of show where you can then allocate what brand it's part of, what market, all of this different kind of powerful information that once you've got this stored in your DAM associated to your content and you're connecting to your other systems, you're really creating that full circle picture and able to then enhance your addition of AI to your workflows. There's also things like AI tagging. You're able to go then and have different models, depending on what connects to your DAM, to tag that for you, and then say whether or not you approve that or not approve that. But that can help sometimes with manual tagging can just take a lot of time as well. But we go back to the human aspect of needing to sit there and verify as well before sending it on into builder programs or management issues after that. And so that's really kind of in a nutshell. I wanted to create kind of a higher level view of this particular instance for DAM and how it can really help you here. Are there any questions? Or Sarah, I may have asked it back to you.
Thank you so much. That was really insightful. And yeah, I'm sure it's pre-answered a few questions that the audience may have. So yeah, I'd love to open up the floor now to the audience. Anyone that has any questions, feel free. But I have a couple of questions that I'd love to direct to all of you in the meantime as well. So Elisa, I'd love to start with you, mostly because, you know, it's a very unique job title that you have as, you know, sort of Senior Director of Digital Shelf and PDP Excellence in particular. It's you know, not a job title that you hear very often, so I'm sure everyone is quite keen to learn a bit more about it. So could you share with us, you know, what is your role, and also curious to know, how does your team approach Digital Shelf and PDP Excellence across you know, sort of the main retail channels that you partner with?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So yeah, I'm very glad to be here. So as Sarah mentioned, I'm the Senior Director of Digital Shelf and PDP Excellence at Colgate-Palmolive. So I sit on the Global E-commerce organization, and my role is pretty much the intersection of digital shelf, data analytics, and AI. And our goal is to take all the signals and make a better shopping experience for the consumer with the end goal of driving growth. When I think about Digital Shelf myself, I think about it as a decision-making agent, right? Where every piece of information becomes a shopping intent, right? A purchase decision. Every product information, every review, every attribute signal, every availability signal, every competitor information, or everything they do under PDP is an opportunity for the consumer to better understand the products, to compare, right, across what's available, and then finally make the right choice for them. When we think about Digital Shelf, it really touches every single step of the consumer journey, right? We have it in the discovery phase, in the consideration, in the purchase, right, in the decision. So as it goes through all of those phases, our goal is to be able to allow the consumers to easily find our product, understand it, right, and then make the right choice for them at the right moment that they're trying to buy the product. I would say as digital commerce becomes more complex, right, behind the scenes, and we are all suffering from that, right, the experience for the consumer actually has to become simpler, right? And in my opinion and in my experience, the simplest experiences are the ones that remove friction. So really our goal and our job is how do we make that seamless, right? And how we build the experience to allow the consumers to be able to find the product easier and make the right choice.
Fantastic. That's really interesting to hear. And I'm sure now everyone will be interested, Abhishek, to hear from you, because you're also in a global role, but your job title is e-commerce director. But of course, I'm sure, well, I'm assuming a big part of that is the digital shelf. So does a lot of that resonate with you? Are there any differences in your role compared to Elisa's, for example?
Yeah, no, I think digital shelf excellence is a key part on basically how we show up when consumers are looking at our categories and our brands on the retailer website. So it's very, very critical, right? And then for us, the challenge is not just sort of creating content. It's all about how do we sort of scale, localize, approve, distribute content across hundreds of retailers, right, without losing brand consistency. Yeah, absolutely, I completely agree with what Elisa mentioned, and yeah, that definitely resonates with us.
That's great to hear. And Dale, you mentioned some great things about the integration of DAM with your PIM. So I'm sure you know that new learnings for a lot of the attendees listening in today as well. So what would you say is the most common mistake that organizations make when they're integrating DAM with PIM or even other system? And then you also mentioned the metadata alignment. So curious to know how important is the metadata alignment between the DAM and the PIM, for success?
And that's exactly where I'd go, is the metadata, because the more that you're strengthening all of your content with that metadata, you can have your consistency and get to market faster. And it really allows you to help your teams know where everything is at, when it comes down to either status or whether something is not to be used anymore, or it's a regional. And it helps all of your systems align. So whether you're using one system or multiple systems, you really want that continuity across with your taxonomy to keep that consistency and help you with that speed.
Fantastic. And yeah, we're getting a few questions through, so feel free to continue sending in your questions to everyone listening in. So one for you, Abhishek, is how are you balancing speed, in other words, getting content out fast, but also with control and consistency? And how are your creative and e-com teams collaborating effectively inside the DAM to achieve this?
Yeah. So it's about having the right ways of working between the digital commerce teams and our brand teams, which we have. Like our brand teams essentially own the asset creation. So think of like keto images, lifestyle photography, videos, brand campaigns, packaging renders, and then our decom teams. And we've got like a digital, like in our decom teams, we've got like a content team, like which basically their job is to really look at the retailer specific requirements, making sure that we are building our PDP content with those assets. We're optimizing across across all retailers and marketplaces, and then including like when we get feedback, no, like because some of the retailers we can get data in terms of is our PDP driving conversion, click-through rate, and yeah, so I think this really helps. So I think for us the collaboration is tools like PIM and DAM obviously play a very critical role, and if they are all now workflow optimized, rights managed, which again really helps, right? As different teams essentially want to get the product out, but then like you definitely the brand manager of a particular brand would need to sign off, right? Now that brand manager doesn't need to sign off today Like if you think about hundreds of PDP across like, few dozens retailer, like what they need to do is once your key assets, key messaging are all signed off, then the resizing and adaptation essentially is owned by decom teams. No, so that's how we operate.
Okay, fantastic. That's really interesting to hear. And then what would you say, Abhishek, another sort of follow-up question, I think, from what you were just talking about. What matters most when turning governed DAM content into retail-ready execution at scale? So clean product data, workflow governance, or local market activation, what's the sort of the most priority?
See, for us, the important part is governance, right? And governance needs to be embedded in the workflows, right? Things like automated workflow, version control, having the right metadata and tagging it properly, extremely important. And now, even with agentic, it's even more important than it was earlier, because now you need the right product, metadata, because now you also potentially would need to syndicate content into AI engines, right? And not just your retail partners. So, and I think if your data is not structured well, it'll not be used by these answer engines well. So, yeah.
Interesting. Elisa, anything that you would add to that, or sort of, what your priorities would be?
Yeah, I would say that governance is key. I would also say that having structured data and having versioning of the data is very important. Something that we have noticed is there's a lot of times where we have a lot of information, but it's very hard to find it and we don't have that accessibility to the team. So I think accessibility, easy to find, is key to the success of all of these workflows as well.
Yeah, interesting. And how do you sort of, keep this consistent, your product content across print and digital channels?
So I think honestly that the challenge has fundamentally changed, because historically, if we think about it, we wanted to be consistent, right? And consistent meant that we wanted the same content across all the different channels. Today, the challenge is slightly different, right? Because what we want to do is have the right content for the right person at the right time. And that's very different than the way we used to think in the past. I think consumers also shop very different and they have very different intents, right? Some might be looking to compare products for a new product. Somebody may just want to buy something really quickly, right? And as we think about personalization, retail media, AI really evolving, right? We might have to have different information to show to the same person or different personas in order to make the experience resonate, right? And I think the challenge, and this is where I feel a lot of organizations get stuck, is not having multiple sources of truth. That's not what we need, but it's truly have one source of truth that actually can be expressed in many different relevant ways that resonate with the different consumers and with the different shopper intents. And really, the goal is not to have everything identical, right? It's really to be able to be connected, to be able to use the data. And I think like different shoppers are going to want different answers, different questions, different information. And I think the biggest thing is as long as it's guided by the product truth and by everything that we consider to be our product information, then the answer really doesn't matter, right? Because we're appealing to what they want to understand.
Very interesting. And I see, Daryl, you've been agreeing, nodding along to a lot of that. So I'd love to know anything to add, or does it resonate with you?
Absolutely resonates. And I feel like that's something, it starts off where it's not just more about storing everything and consolidating things, but having your one centralized location and then all the information around that. So if you really start out from that standpoint, it allows you to go even further because you know you've given yourself that core foundation. And so I think nowadays having to keep up with all the SEO, AEO, GEO, all the acronyms, everything you have to keep up with these days for AI to then read and disseminate to the right people at the right time, the more information that you can have attached to your assets, the better off you'll be.
Yeah, yeah. And since we were talking about challenges, with the CPG clients that you work with, what have you seen as the biggest implementation challenge when they're trying to connect their DAM with product data, content automations into workflows?
I think it depends obviously on the case by case basis. But in general, I feel like it's making sure that everything is aligned across the line with your metadata and making sure that all of your taxonomy is lined up, which then enables everyone to find everything easier, faster. And like Aliza was saying, the ability to be able to search and find something based on whether it's AI tagging that has helped you with it or an individual's tagging or brand information. Getting all of that aligned really can take some time to sort through, but it makes a big difference in the end, no matter where that information is going to.
Yeah, and since you were talking about AI tagging, of course, we can't have a webinar nowadays without talking about AI. So, when you mentioned AI, where is AI actually delivering value, should I say, in the metadata? And what's one governance rule or practice that every organization should have in place before they start scaling with AI?
So I think it's having internal governance. I think that's something we're seeing in a lot of different customers, and when I have different conversations about it, is sometimes people are very timid with AI, whereas other times people just want to get on it before being left behind. And it's really just making the right decision at the right time for what your goal is, and not just AI because AI. I think things like AI tagging is still coming up to speed with the ability to recognize, everything's getting better by the moment. But we still need that human touch to verify and edit some of that tagging. The AI tagging, I think, really does help with when you're dealing with such a mass amount of pack shots or any of that kind of information. And then it's still, it can speed up that portion, but then a human still needs to go in and kind of verify everything from there. But it can really accelerate that timeline at different points in your production process.
Yeah, I think that probably resonates with everybody in the audience, is how AI can be a time and a cost saver. So that's a great point. Keen to hear from Abhishek or Aliza. How are you implementing AI into your content strategies as well across ecom, and what are maybe some of the lessons learned, some of the tips that you could share with the audience? So maybe Abhishek, we can start with you.
Sure. So I think the way we're looking at AI is obviously, retailer AI assistants, and how consumers are interacting with them, and what kind of product data is coming in as consumers prompt those engines, no? So I think just making sure your PDP copy reflects that in terms of Q&A, like just being a bit more thoughtful when you're writing PDP, because yes, you're, for, in the earlier, like I would say from an SEO point of view, you've done a great job in looking at the keyword and volume of those keywords and making sure those keywords are there in PDP. But now, we need to be more thoughtful, because if you're already providing structured question and answers, structured answers to the questions in your PDP, think of like a below the fold, right? You're already making it's easier for the retailer agents to essentially pick up your brand potentially as consumers look at the category. So, and then from external agents like ChatGPT and Perplexities of the world, I think it's important that you have a holistic strategy, because just to generate one answer, the AI engines look at 30 plus citations, 30 plus sources. So you need to be there on a Reddit, you need to be there on on a social media, I don't know, Instagram or YouTube, and then your own brand.com. So everything, all those touch points need to essentially have similar messaging. So you need to make sure your content is now on those AI surfaces, right? And you need to be deliberate about it. So that means, again, building capability to build long form content, listicles, and most of the CPG companies, because now we've content marketing in true sense of really building listicles and blogs is not something which we've done in the recent past, right? It's being really amplifying our brands on social media, on retail media networks, on connected TVs and things like that. That's what we all do, because our consumers essentially are consuming the content on our brands in these touch points. But now when you're thinking about agent as a cohort, right? Because you want to market to an agent, because historically we've marketed only to the shopper and the consumer. So that is now changing. So you need to make sure your content is on surfaces where just AI engines essentially crawl and collect the information.
Right, right. Yeah, that's really insightful to hear. And anything to add to that, Elisa?
Yeah, I would say if I think about the digital shelf, right? I think the first shelf was physical, right? The second digital, and then the third one is really like almost AI recommendation, right? And I would say like I think the biggest advice I can give is set your foundation right, right? Because do you have structured data? Is this data accessible? Is it connected, right? Because I think AI is only going to be as strong as the data we're able to collect behind it, right? And we're able to surface to the different engines or the different AI capabilities. And one of the other things I think about is technology will continue to change, but product truth and the foundation is not going to change, right? So I think that's where getting it right, it's very important.
That's some really good tips there. Yeah. And Elisa, actually, a follow-up question from that would be, when product data and content are sitting in separate systems, where do you typically see the most friction, and how does this impact the speed to market or accuracy?
Yeah, so I do believe that the biggest friction happen when they set separate, but I also think that it gets enlarged when the teams or even the consumer don't have access to complete product information, right? I feel like, in my opinion and based on my experience, delays rarely happen because of the lack of information, but they happen because teams don't know where to get it. They don't know which version to trust, where it sits, if it sits in multiple systems, right? And because of that, a simple change, a simple update can take many systems, many people, many revisions before it actually hits the shelf. And that's where we are seeing the delays. And I think as AI becomes more embedded into the commerce, right, we have to think about, and I think Abhishek said it well, that it's not only going to be important to have content, but it's going to be very important to have structured data. And this is going to be key. And AI can only be as good as the data that it can access, it can understand, it can trust, right? And in the AI era, right, visibility, and we talk about this, but visibility won't rely only in the information, but it will rely on the information that it can access and it can connect across the different sources. And I think that's why consolidation is very important. And I like to think that it's not about control, right? But it's really about giving clarity. And I think that the organizations that are going to move the fastest is not the ones that are going to have the information available, but are going to be the ones that make that information easy to find, easy to access, and easy to trust.
Very interesting to hear. Thank you for sharing that. And going back to having a strong DAM in place, Dale, again, from your experience with the CPGs that you're working with, what role does DAM play in speeding up the actual time to market for new product launches, for example?
Well, it goes back to like what we've been talking about here with the strength behind your assets. And if you have that foundation, that's really where you then have more accessibility and you have the ability to accelerate your timeline, because you've set up that foundation. You've already put that core product metadata behind where you're stemming from. So it really resonates then thereafter, because you have to keep up with so much these days in so many different areas and so many different touch points. I really feel like that's the core of what you need to make sure you have.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Abhishek, what's your thoughts on it? Have you seen cases where having a strong DAM, does it make a bigger impact than just improving your PIM? Have you seen compelling product experiences without a strong DAM, for example?
Yeah, so see, PIM provides the facts, right? And DAM, the way I think about it is provides the experience. So you cannot, both are needed to deliver content, right, to our shoppers. So I don't think so weak PIM or a weak DAM would be acceptable in the equation. So you need a strong PIM system and a strong DAM system, because as I said, PIM drives discoverability and compliance, and DAM essentially drives engagement and conversion. So you need both.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. And Elisa, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add that they truly complement each other. And I think with the change in the environment, they just become more important for the success of any company, because that's where we're going to host all the data that is needed to able to provide to the assistants, the consumer, the retailers, right? So I think they, more than ever, they are very important to our tech stack.
Fantastic. And it's always important to talk a bit about capabilities as well. So for you both, Abhishek and Elisa, and Dale, would love to, again, also to get your thoughts from the suppliers that you work with. When again, talking about speed, automation, all the different ways in which brands can do that now. So when you're trying to automate content delivery across retail channels, what's one of the capabilities that most teams underestimate? So anyone's welcome to kind of throw in their thoughts on that.
Yeah, I can start. And I think my advice is that we usually start with what is the solution we want to do, what is the technology we want to use, but we actually have to start with what's the problem, what are we trying to solve for? Because my experience is that we cannot automate a process that doesn't exist or something that doesn't exist. So I think before we even discuss what platform we want to use or what AI tool we want to be or what technology, is truly understanding what's the workflow, who's making the content, who's creating it, where is the friction points, right? Where are tasks being duplicated? And I think once we understand that piece, then we understand the friction points, and then we understand the opportunities. And that's why when we can actually automate, because I think at the end of the day, we cannot automate processes that doesn't exist. So I think it's a combination of how we pair technology with the right process to really scale success.
I absolutely agree. And I think it's one of those things where, especially with AI being such a hot topic right now, people tend to jump and want to run to, oh, let's do something with AI. But there could be another way, depending on how your basic process is going in the first place. There may just be automations that can do something in a much more manageable fashion. So it really comes down to your purpose and what's your goal and your purpose, and making sure you have a strong sense of that before choosing what route to go.
Yeah, I think from just to sort of complement, what Dale and Elisa mentioned, I think, the companies today which are winning in the world of e-commerce with respect to digital shelf, are the ones who can essentially create, approve, localize, adapt, and distribute content at scale, right? And that's where having a very strong foundation, a partner who's doing payment DAM, and to Elisa's point, a very strong workflow can create a meaningful difference.
Fantastic. I think that's a great closing remark, actually, Abhishek, from you. So, we've had some really great insights, some great learnings. Thank you. Thank you all for your thoughts, and thank you, Dale, for your presentation. I hope everyone has enjoyed today's webinar. So yeah, I think we'll, we'd love to continue the conversation. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can forward them on to everyone in listening in today. I'm sure everyone, Abhishek, Elisa, and Dale, are happy to be connected with on LinkedIn as well. So we'd love to build a community and continue this conversation. So thank you again to our presenters, and thank you everyone for listening in. We hope you enjoyed today's webinar, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.